I've wanted to write this book ever since I first read about Louis Le Prince in another film book in very quick passing, where I mentioned this man who had made a film years before the Lumiere brothers or Thomas Edison or anybody else. And I was surprised as a cinephile that I'd never heard his name. And so I looked him up and I very quickly became obsessed because Le Prince's films were available to see, the patents were available to read, and it seemed very clear that this man had made the first motion picture ever. He's been mostly forgotten by history because a couple of years after filming that first motion picture, he boarded a train in France and disappeared, never to be seen again. So that was the first originating question that also connected to a fascination I'd always had about the invention of the movies and all the different pioneers who'd raced to discover this new technology. And I thought this was one way to explore that whole era at the turn of the 19th century into the 20th, when sort of capturing movement and life seemed to be the final frontier of technological advancement. Le Prince was separate from his competitors in part because he was an artisan, an artist who worked with a small team and who wasn't backed by millionaires the way Edison was, and who wasn't personally wealthy. He'd been a painter, he'd been a photographer, he had experimented with ways to transfer images onto ceramic and plates and other decorative things. And he seemed to have been the first who had a very clear conception of the movies as we have them today. He was the first to imagine people watching movies in a cinema, in a group, in a theater. And he was the first to imagine motion pictures not as a way to make money primarily, or as a scientific advancement primarily, but as a way to entertain people and to advance understanding between people from all corners of the globe. And he seemed very obsessed and very animated by this idea. He was someone whose skill set perfectly combined to lead him to try and solve this problem of how to connect endless photographs and move them to recreate motion. On top of that, having had this hope for him to have come so close to making his invention public and becoming known as the inventor of motion pictures and then disappearing, and that mystery being unsolved, felt very unique and compelling to me. Because Le Prince disappeared so long ago, and because the original investigation into his disappearance was botched in the sense that it was months, weeks, and months before his family even knew he had gone missing, because of the vagaries of the 19th century and his wife and children being in the United States while he was in France. That was a whole unexpected way of approaching a mystery, in the sense that it was about looking for consistencies and inconsistencies and trying to eliminate what was impossible, and trying to find motives and likely paths. In an odd way, the process sort of mirrored what he had done in trying to invent motion pictures, which is, I would start out with a theory, as he would have in trying to make his machine work, and then I would take it as far as I could take it before finding some way it didn't work. And then I went back to square one, and using that knowledge, started on a different theory, until one of them, which is the one I get to in the book, became impossible to argue with, and also became impossible to easily dismiss because of the inconsistencies that would need to be explained